Yo, some silly guy said Jesus was a troublemaker who demanded marital permanence, monogamy, and other strict rules. Blame him. Yet Christ's teachings afforded society its greatest stability. So I'll examine this classical viewpoint. The family unit from which all humanity arises originates from God. Despite their differences, the major religions, along with many non-religious, agreed that the nuclear family is humanity's centrifugal force. Alternative lifestyles. Some argue that opposition to non-traditional families rests solely upon arbitrary religious bigotry. They praise alternative lifestyles, namely matriarchy, woman-headed households, polygamy, same-sex marriage, mixed marriages between different major races and cultures, and couples foregoing marriage altogether. But can they prove that there has been a large, successful, and harmonious society of humans who comprised one of the aforementioned alternative groups? If not, the idea of non-traditional families rests on air. We must determine what works, then discipline ourselves to keep it working. Anthropologist J.D. Unwin studied numerous tribes and civilizations which existed through 5,000 years of history and wrote a book on his findings. He found an exact correlation between monogamy and civilization. Strict heterosexual monogamy within marriage is always required to create a civilization, and rampant homosexuality, promiscuity, premarital and extramarital relations always tears it apart. This was verified by Aldous Huxley, who reflected the same sentiment. Both men were non-religious, defeating any notion of religious bias. Sexual intimacy tends to create psychological bonding. Marital fidelity's opposite, casual sex, is universally antithetical to stable, loving relationships. This dynamic is written into the very biomechanics of human physiology. According to various historical religions, intimate physical relations, sans marriage, have always been deemed sinful because in marriage, two mystically become one flesh, a sanctified unit to God. Non-marital intimacy is considered connecting with an unsanctified and foreign party. It has been said countless times, we don't need a piece of paper. Yet upon saying, may I then have all your cash? Pieces of paper suddenly become imperative. Likewise, being properly married is legal tender with God. Any intimate relationship outside marriage is deemed counterfeit. Historical marriage contrasted with contemporary marriage. Traditionalists created the Defense of Marriage Act, which opposed same-sex marriage and upheld the heterosexual status quo. Yet marriage had problems since earliest times. Throughout world history, polygamy was practiced. Normally, about equal numbers of male and female children are born. If a minority of men corner a majority of women in plural marriages, many men are thereby forcibly unmarried. Unsatisfied needs leads to illicit sex and dangerously disgruntled men. Concerning quote-unquote Old Testament heroes with their multiple wives, every case of polygamy was a fiasco. Godly men repented of their plural marriages. Those who didn't forsook God and purportedly suffered spiritual death. Besides blatantly contradicting Christ's credo, the Lord Christ's credo of two becoming one, and Christ's command for monogamy, this continued practice has stolen potential mates from millions. Conquering armies sometimes took conquered men's wives. Sometimes a marriage was forcefully terminated by a spouse's parents, the wife given away to someone else. In rare instances, this setup continues today. Other historical marriages were initiated merely to acquire political alliance or social status. Within monogamous marriages of mutual consent, many men married women only for sexual gratification. Women were often considered mere sex objects or servants. As bad as that is, women's superficial attitude towards men was even worse. Generally, there was no regard or consideration for a man's body. A man was what he wore, literally a suit, hat, and pair of shoes. Men throughout history have been used solely as a source of monetary income, denials notwithstanding. It's been said, my wife divorced me over religious differences. She worshiped money and I didn't have any. So don't defend historical marriage just because it's historical. Christianity's original understanding was that divorce was permissible only in cases of adultery. Second marriages were termed digamy. Even with adultery, spouses were encouraged to forgive and reconcile. Throwing away your spouse like yesterday's garbage is evil. I suffered that terrible experience. Yet worldwide divorce rates skyrocketed when so-called no-fault divorce was introduced. Because of this evil law, your marriage can be terminated immediately without cause, even if you don't agree to it, don't appear in court, don't even sign anything or comply whatsoever. Its stability is destroyed, leaving no defense. As for marriages that hold together, many couples incessantly fight and argue for years. Spousal, mental, and physical abuse is widespread. Domestic disputes are the most common service call of police. Child abuse by parents is also much more common than school or stranger violence. Most married people aren't abusers, but neglect is rampant. Television often dominates multiple rooms. Each family member injects their 30-hour-a-week fix. Unwed pregnancy has skyrocketed because few parents teach their children the importance of abstinence. Yet being born out of wedlock dramatically increases the likelihood of future criminal activity. Granted, raising children today is exhausting and enormously expensive. However, legalized abortion has been an unconscionable solution. Some couples choose childlessness, eliminating marriage's traditional and original purpose altogether. However, those with children often allow them to publicly run rampant, scream horrendously, and disturb everyone around. In sharp contrast, both Judaism and Christianity taught strict discipline of children, which required having a two-parent household and included spankings, so a child's unruly behavior didn't become unruly adult behavior. Clement of Alexandria's The Instructor, Book 1, Chapter 9, AD 193. He, the Lord, commands by Solomon, "Strike thy son with a rod, that thou mayest deliver his soul from death." As a child, I was taught children should be seen and not heard. And I turned out beautifully. Contemporary laxity is indefensible. Stay tuned for part 2.